You're building better housing. That's one issue that we have over here.
Liberty Square Rising, the oldest public housing project in South Florida, is coming down. We'll talk about what's going up in its place.
There aren't a lot of preconceived notions about me, so that's good.
That is Pam Keith campaigning to be the Democrat who unseats Marco Rubio in the Senate. She's got an impressive resume.
I belong to a traumatized generation, haunted by the world's indifference.
And remembering the life of Elie Wiesel, we will have a live report from New York where the Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor is being honored after his death at age 87.
Good morning and welcome on this 4th of July holiday weekend.
We salute America, still the last best hope on the earth on the eve of Independence Day.
We begin today with the future of Liberty Square, the 80-year-old public housing project in Liberty City. It has been on the decline for decades, run down, dangerous, victim to a culture of crime around it, but inside home to low-income families and about 700 apartments.
And they are eagerly awaiting a vote on Wednesday to pick a developer to tear down and replace the pork and beans, as it is known, with something newer, better, and much safer. The Miami-Dade County Commission will vote on an ambitious, also an expensive plan next week. It is called Liberty City Rising, a $307 million development with 757 public housing units, 815 workforce and affordable housing units, and then important amenities like a new grocery store and retail shops. Sarah Smith is the president of the Liberty Square Public Housing Tenant Council. She is an important voice representing the residents there.
Michael Liu is the director of the Miami-Dade Department of Public Housing and Community Development. That is essentially the landlord of Liberty Square that'll work with the developer chosen to rebuild it. And Al Milo Jr. is Senior Vice President of Related Urban Development Group, the developer selected through a contentious bidding process and recommended by Mayor Carlos Jimenez. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you all come in. Michael Liu, let's put some historical perspective here. What is proposed for Liberty Square Rising is, you say, unlike almost anything that's ever been done and the most expensive housing project done in Miami-Dade County.
Absolutely. The history of public housing in Miami-Dade County started off way back in the days of FDR with this project.
Right.
And it was a very vibrant beginning, but as indicated in the opening, it's been on decline. There's been cut in subsidies from the federal government. There certainly was the unfortunate House of Lies earlier, about 10 years ago, the Miami Herald, and since then. So this really marks a new beginning, a turning point for affordable and public housing in all of Miami-Dade, as you said. It sets really a template for how we approach redeveloping.
And the rest of the country is watching what happens as well.
Absolutely, they are.
The community has been watching the selection process over the past year. Sarah Smith, you are one of the 9 voting members. You are the only resident that was on that selection committee. And if you'll allow me to go there for a minute, it was very contentious. The developer that you were firmly behind, Atlantic Pacific, you were sort of the fulcrum of a real issue on that board when the choice went the other way to Related. Tell us what happened. What happened in that process?
With the process that had happened earlier when I had selected Atlantic Pacific, they was the only one that came forth with a complete package with the Sector 3 that was involved in it. At that time, they had a better proposal. And when it came down for the second term for the second election, they didn't have a upgraded selecting better than, urban related, because they cleaned up the package. They gave us more for the community. They came up with education empowerment. They came up with economic development. They came up with more housing available for the whole community. It wasn't only for Liberty Square, but it was for Liberty City.
You know what the concern was, is that there were politics played in a big way. That is the concern, and I don't think I'm saying anything that anyone else hasn't said before. Are there politics involved here? Are people being lobbied and paid and promised things?
Well, as far as I know, on our behalf, it's not no hidden agendas. It's transparent. We made it clear that we want what's best for Liberty City, and we want what's best for Liberty Square, and the residents does too. As far as the other sides, I can't really say that it is or isn't because I'm not for sure.
Well, there is a huge public relations campaign, but there normally is on almost any project. Milo, your company won with a much improved bid. I think everyone would agree. Certainly Mayor Carlos Jimenez did. Let's put some images up on the screen to show what you and your company are proposing to do, and kind of walk us through what we expect to see, what you expect to build here in Liberty Square Rising.
I mean, Michael, again, thank you and Glenna for the opportunity to be here and to, again, share the facts about what our redevelopment proposal is about. As Ms. Smith mentioned, there was an opportunity to do initial bids, and then there was a subsequent opportunity for best and final offers. And we took the time during the best and final offer process to really analyze and see what things we can improve in our best and final offer. And I think that's where we really separated ourselves from the other competitor. We have educational components in our bid. We have healthcare components in our bid.
You have a grocery store. There hasn't been a new grocery store in Liberty City and at least since the McDuffie riots.
That's correct. I mean, the area is a food desert. You know, there aren't quality opportunities for the residents to go and shop at. They have to rely on smaller stores that charge much more for their services than any other community has to.
Can I follow that up for a moment? Who is going to be selected to run the grocery store? Who owns the businesses? How does that private component play? Who chooses that? So
that's part of our role, you know, as the developer. You know, that's where we can do things that with our partner as the county, they have other limitations where we as the private sector can solicit proposals from national grocery stores. And if you actually see our proposal, that's what we said. We said that we're going to bring a national grocery store chain to the corner of 12th and Martin Luther King Boulevard. Yeah. So those are the kind of things that we can do, and that's the benefit of having these public-private partnerships.
Al, what is the timeline here? When are you going to start? I mean, assuming that on Wednesday, I think a related urban development group is going to be chosen. I think it should be chosen. When will you start demolishing what is there and building a new
So we
facility?
We want to start that process immediately. You know, this community has been waiting for over a year now, just in this as part of the selection process. Part of our best and final offer also came up with a plan by where we're going to take some of the vacant units within Liberty Square. We're going to renovate those temporarily to allow us to vacate a portion of the site and start demolishing that portion of the site. So that was another major distinction where we listened to the fact that the community did not want to be displaced, and they certainly did not want to move necessarily to the Brownsville location, so we made that modification.
As happened when the James Scott projects was demolished and then rebuilt. Those people, many of them never got to come back to that area.
And that's a very important point, since many people in the community remember Scott Carver and all of the aftermath, the displacement, the fact that it took 12 years, that it was hampered by the corruption that occurred with the House Supplies in the middle of all of that. Big difference here. Scott Carver started off with 850 public housing units, and they only planned to build 177. So there was a guaranteed displacement factor there. Not the case here, as you pointed out at the outset. 757 units. Currently, there are only about 636 that are occupied. So the residents, we're going to make good on our promise. That folks are going to be able to come back to a unit.
You know what I wanted to ask you? You know, Liberty City and Liberty Square has had such a difficult narrative over the past decade. And most of the problems, aside from the decrepit nature of the housing, most of the problems of crime and danger come from the outside in. You build this beautiful new complex, a sprawling neighborhood with all these amenities. How do you change? How do you keep it more secure? How do you change the culture of the difficulties that this place has had from the outside? What component changes that?
Well, there are a lot of components, and it starts off with a changed community with stakeholders, people feeling that they have a stake in the community, both from the landlord's standpoint, the residents, the fact that we're going to be bringing in new people to work with the current residents, and also jobs. This project has over 1,100 jobs promised during construction, close to 260, 300 jobs post-construction. That process has already started.
These jobs, Michael, are for people who live in Liberty City and in Liberty Square?
And it's part of our contract with Related that they and their subcontractors have to perform on that score.
What kind of jobs?
So they're going to be all types of jobs. Initially, they're going to be construction-related jobs. As far as the redevelopment is concerned, we want to make sure that the residents participate in the rebuilding of their own community. That's a big focus of our proposal. We have job training specifically for zip codes 33142 and 33147, which are the zip codes in and around Liberty Square and Brownsville. So we know that the residents are going to participate in the design process through the charrettes, but we also want to make sure that they participate in the rebuilding process, and subsequently that they actually have jobs and amenities that we all enjoy in our communities within their community.
Right. Michael Liu, let's talk about money. This is just a huge bill cost for this project, total $307 million. Who's paying?
Primarily the private sector. The county is investing only $46 million. And I say only because our return is going to be $7 for every $1 that we invest.
That's
plus,
pretty good return on investment.
We're going to get all of that back by year 15. That is a very strong distinguishing factor of why I think the evaluation committee chose who they did, is because in their financial plan, we share in the revenues to an extensive level. First time ever in county history, and we get repaid our $48 million on the 46 by year 15, and we continue to share in the revenues till the very end.
Yeah, the
Is that a
46
guarantee?
million, just to, excuse me, to kind of button that up, the 46 million is from the Building Better Communities General Obligation bond issue, so it's not new money.
Well,
this is money that's already been approved by voters.
It's a combination of that, but it's also a combination of new resources that we were able to understand and figure out based on my background in housing for many years that hadn't been tapped before, as well as surtax dollars. So it's a combination of GO bonds, surtax, and what is called the Capital Fund Financing Program. So it's a unique financial incentive package.
I was just curious to ask Al, is that a guarantee by the developer? That money is guaranteed to the county?
That money is guaranteed as part of our contract in different revenue streams. You know, we have capitalized lease payments, share of developer fees, and like Mr. Liu said, ongoing cash flow. You know, the county is truly our partner, where they will share 50% of the revenues of this transaction.
And finally, just last word here, Ms. Sarah, I have to say, Wednesday when the Miami-Dade Commission meets, I know you, many residents of Liberty Square are going to be there, and you are hoping that the commissioner for your district, Audrey Edmondson, votes yes on this project.
Yes, we are hoping that she will support this development for us to proceed to move on. And we also asking for her colleagues as well to support this redevelopment for Liberty City and Liberty Square that's much needed.
Looking for a 13-0 vote.
Yes.
Unanimous.
I want an unanimous vote if I could, yes.
Okay, well, Glenna and I will probably both be there, who knows, but certainly one of us. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thanks
you
again.
coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
All right, up next, a candidate for the U.S. Senate you may not have heard about yet, but you will when we come back. We will introduce you to Pam Keith. Stay with us.
In the race for the U.S. Senate in Florida, Marco Rubio, as you surely know by now, is running for re-election, and the polls say he is the early favorite. He is being challenged in the August primary by home builder Carlos Baruf. On the Democratic side, Congressman Patrick Murphy and Alan Grayson both are running hard, but both face questions about their ethical records. So enter candidate Pam Keith, a lawyer and military veteran with an impressive resume but no political experience. Glenna sat down with her earlier this week.
Who's Pam Keith? And that's got to hurt in some way as a candidate who's been working so long to get your name out.
I don't let that get in my way, and I don't let that discourage me. Every single time that I get an opportunity to introduce myself, to make my case, I make it, and I make it strongly. I win people over. In fact, I blow their doors off. So in a way, I consider it an opportunity. There aren't a lot of preconceived notions about me, so that's good. There's also sort of a low expectation. And so when they hear the depth at which I can discuss the issues, my ideas and my new solutions, the passion and authenticity that I communicate, people are so pleasantly surprised.
Pam Keith is a Miami-based labor attorney, veteran naval officer, well-versed in national issues, a political first-timer targeting a U.S. Senate seat. Why choose your first entrance into the political world, the U.S. Senate?
I think I get that question a lot on the campaign trail. Part of it is how I look at politics. I believe that every role that you have in politics has merit and value in and of itself. And so while there are people who go into local politics with the eye to always, going up the chain, I think that what happens if you really think about that is that quite often you serve your political ambition more so than you serve the actual role. I also think that you have to run for the office where you have a personal platform. I'm not running just to be a senator. I'm running because I have a platform that I want to see advanced, and that platform is steeped in the law and in the areas that I've been exposed to, and those are all federal issues. But there are two that sort of float to the top for me as ones that I'm most passionate about. One of which is the over-incarceration of Americans. And that's a really big topic that has a lot of moving parts to it, but it's something that I think people on both sides of the political fence are looking at. Some of it because of the fiscal strain that it's putting on our communities, and also because of the moral imperative behind what's going on with the over-incarceration of Americans. So that's an issue that I'm very passionate about, and I speak at a variety of different ways. The other, as a veteran of the United States Navy, the way our veterans are treated is absolutely abominable, in my opinion. Not just being a veteran, but being a veteran who's actually worked through the VA claims process. I have a personal experience with it. Obviously, I spend a lot of time with other veterans. And what most veterans believe is that nothing will ever change in the VA because it doesn't seem to matter whether you have a Republican administration or a Democratic administration. The institutional problems within the VA never seem to ameliorate.
Without the fundraising numbers of her primary opponents, both congressmen, Keith struggles for attention. Her outsider's odds got better, she believes, with the recent implosion of party-backed frontrunner Patrick Murphy's resume.
I don't think embellishing your background is okay. That to me is tantamount to lying. I was a naval officer, I was a Navy JAG, but it would definitely be more impressive to say I was a Navy SEAL. I don't get to say that because it makes me look better. It's not true.
And yet look at the backing he has from the president and the vice president. And
right. But that's, again, a party machination. I think that they started from the position that Patrick had the strongest fundraising record. He actually won in 2014 when so many people did not. And so they thought he was their strongest guy. I think Grayson's challenges are really about some of his personality quirks and the way people perceive him. And I think that there are some things in his background that people find off-putting as well.
Such as?
Well, I certainly think that some of his judgment with respect to the hedge funds has caused people to be very suspicious. And he has a way of putting voice to frustrations that some people like a lot. But it also has a way of alienating people. Americans are more polarized now, but they still do have a hunger for voices of reason and people that can find ways of building bridges with the other side to get things done.
Do you have examples of bridges you've built with people who oppose you?
Well, it's hard
I
to
ask you that because there is no lawmaking record to reflect upon.
Exactly. Well, that is true, but if you were to look at my background, you would see a liberal person who's lived a very conservative lifestyle. My first job was in the military, obviously, and not the first job ever, but certainly my first job after my education. And as a naval officer, the first thing you learn is how to make sure that your unit and your group is working as a team. So as a junior officer, you are a member of the team. As you get more senior, you become a leader of a team. That's incredibly important. But also my work life has been almost exclusively in very large corporate law firms and corporations, which also tend to be skewed more conservative. So being able to make friends, make colleagues, get jobs done, get a positive reputation in those environments is indicative of my ability to hold firm to my values and still make friends who view the world very differently than I do.
How much or how little or none at all do gender and race define you?
Oh, they're critical to my sense of identity. My greatest sense of identity is as an American. I was born outside of this country because my parents were working for the U.S. government overseas. I was born in Turkey. I lived in Morocco and Syria. My dad was a U.S. diplomat. Being an African American is also a very strong part of my identity. Not because I think it makes me lesser or separates me from others, but there's a long history that comes with the experience of African Americans in this country.
Remember Marco Rubio's moment of thirst? Giving the response to the 2013 State of the Union, Keith said that was her aha moment that put her on the path to politics.
I realized in that moment that there was nothing magical about them. There was nothing magical about Marco Rubio. He was there because he had the ambition and the risk-takingness to go ahead and go for it. And if I recall correctly, when he started running for U.S. Senate, most people told him he didn't have a shot, that he was running against an incumbent, Charlie Crist, and that he didn't have a shot at it. But what he did was become the beneficiary of a political wave, of a mood. I know that the argument that I have to make to my party is that the best candidate to emerge from our primary is the candidate who has some litigation chops, who can debate clearly, who speaks clearly and passionately, who understands the issues, and who's appealing to a broad range of Democrats and voters in general.
That is Pam Keith, who is running for the Democratic nomination for Senate. The polls show her getting about 5 to 10% of the vote against the rivals Patrick Murphy and Ellen Grayson, but more than a third of Florida Democrats are still undecided. All right, coming up after the break, our Powerhouse Roundtable. You won't want to miss it. It is that time again when we take a much closer look at the week's top stories with some of the best and brightest in South Florida. So let's introduce them to you. Nancy Ann Crum, familiar face, is the editor of the editorial page of the Herald. They've got a smoking hot editorial this morning on the water crisis, the algae blooms that we are all suffering through. We're also glad to welcome back our friend Bernadette Pardo, veteran political reporter, South Florida, op-ed columnist for El Nuevo, and host of her own show on WQBA Radio. And Dr. Marvin Dunn, psychologist, taught for many years at FIU, chaired the department there. Also a prolific writer. His new book, available on Amazon, is A History of Florida Through Black Eyes. To all of you, good morning. Great to have you come in. If I can, let's acknowledge and talk for a few minutes here about Elie Wiesel. Here is a copy of his book, Night. This is a book that had a profound influence on me. And Nancy, I think he was a huge moral figure on the landscape, not just of this country, but of the world.
Absolutely. And with what we see happening in the world, I'm hoping that the loss of Elie Wiesel can be a gain in driving people to reconnect and to connect maybe for the first time with his words, with his philosophy, with his books, and with his morality, that love can and must conquer hate.
Right, and he spoke of that, having gone to Buchenwald when he was 15 years old with his family. He saw his mother and sister be put in the line to be exterminated. They were gassed and killed, and then he and his father went off. His father died from the labor in these camps.
They beat him to death, I understand.
Yeah.
And it is, as you say, Nancy, it's a reminder that evil is nothing new, and evil on a huge scale is something that we cannot hide from. It's not pretty, but it's part of what makes us human is to recognize it and to try and eradicate it somehow.
Well, as I said off camera, I took from him the view that you don't hide ugly history. You confront evil with evidence of what has happened. And so the photographs of the Holocaust ought to be shown. Photographs of lynchings in this country should be shown. because we simply cannot hide the things that makes us very uncomfortable.
Right. So he, I think, more than any figure, only Anne Frank, I think, probably as a writer had more influence in the world after the Holocaust, but it was really Elie Wiesel who brought this story, his own personal story, through Night Witches, a lightly fictionalized version of his own experience in the death camps. But Marvin, I think that part of what made him such a huge figure was that he just didn't point out the horrors of the Holocaust. He was against intolerance and injustice everywhere, Rwanda or wherever it was, he spoke out.
And that is what made him a world figure and a visionary on the plane of Mandela and others that we could mention. Very few men or women take that great leap where they move beyond their own station, their own realities, and appreciate the future and have a much wider vision of humanity.
Particularly after witnessing such kind of horror.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, our friend and colleague Glenna Milberg is in New York for the funeral today of Elie Wiesel. We will hear from Glenna in a little bit after the roundtable. All right, let's move on to sort of some of the local stories that we want you to comment on and talk about. And Marvin Dunn, let me ask you about Liberty Square. You know this place very well. You know its history better than most. The replacement, this idea of coming in, tearing it down, and building something new and modern and livable and secure for a huge amount of money. I mean, this is past due. This should have happened long ago.
It really, really should have happened long ago, but my concern is that all I'm hearing about is bricks and mortars, how to actually build a physical new Liberty Square housing project, which is absolutely needed, and I support it terribly. I think it's important that we back what they're trying to do. But what about the social rot? What about the broken families? What about the fact that young men coming out of that housing project end up, for the most part, out of school, involved in all kinds of difficulties? What are they doing? What are they proposing that would be different in this housing project that would not make it the same 20 years from now as it is today? That concerns me.
Well, I haven't heard that, Nancy. I haven't heard that addressed. Maybe on Wednesday, when the Miami-Dade Commission takes this up for a vote and selects, I hope they select Related Urban Development Group, which is the preferred developer by the mayor. But this question that Marvin raises is a crucial one.
It's a good question, and what Liberty Square Rising will also entail are so many of the amenities that others take for granted in terms of an educational component, a social services component, the healthcare component.
A grocery store.
A grocery store. We also have to remember that we're dealing with people, and people have different needs. By and large, I think that the people of Liberty Square currently are law-abiding and want the best for their children, want the best for their lives. It was mentioned that a lot of the some violence and crime comes from outside. However, we will have to monitor gang activity within, which might draw opponents from without. It's a very real problem.
Yeah, well, if anybody has not been to 62nd Street and Northwest 12th Avenue in Miami, which is where Liberty Square is located.
And where the riot started.
Yeah,
that very spot, 12th Avenue and 62nd Street.
Absolutely, that was the epicenter of the riot. And also, not just amenities, but the ability to sleep in your bed and not on the floor so you don't get hit by a stray bullet. I like the plan. I like the idea that there is money going to be invested. I like the concept that it's going to be private and public at the same time, because it's the only. But I do think, I agree with Dr. Dunn, that there needs to be a dynamic that goes beyond the brick and mortar. And also, for instance, in the peace talks in Colombia, one of the questions is, what do you do with all these kids who haven't known anything but violence when you disarm them? I think you need to deal with that kind of concept here.
And at the same time, those solutions really have to come from within. People from outside can only help guide.
That's correct.
But they really have to come from within if they're going to have any kind of sustainability at all.
Well, Sarah Smith, who was here earlier taking part in our discussion about Liberty Square, she and the tenant council are utterly dedicated to remaking this not just bricks and mortars, but to change the culture. But I mean, look, let's face it, this is a very tough neighborhood. And it's been
I don't think you have,
downtrodden
I don't think there's one answer, but I think to have people live in decent conditions is one of the many answers that are needed.
Well, we'll see what the Miami-Dade Commission does on Wednesday. All right, stay with us. We are going to take a break. Back with more of the roundtable in just a minute. Welcome back. We are in the midst of our roundtable discussion, and I want to move it on now, if I may, to Zika. In the state of Florida, as of Friday, there were 203 cases of Zika. All of them are travel related. It is not the Aegypti mosquito yet, although that may yet happen.
They're all in my backyard, that's why.
Well, drain and cover, Bernie. But tragically, there was a birth this week of a woman who gave birth to a child with microcephaly. And I think, I am afraid that this may be the first of many other such cases, or some number.
Oh, I don't doubt it. There have been 5 children born now in the country with microcephaly, and the first in Florida just recently. Yes, she was a Haitian citizen infected outside of this country, and unfortunately, like every dire issue such as this, it has become a political football. Politics have injected themselves. We wrote an editorial earlier this week saying this is the time for Senator Marco Rubio, who wants to reclaim his seat, to step up and be a hero. His state is ground zero.
And it is mainly Republicans in Congress, Marvin, who are saying, we'll vote for this, but you got to put in a provision to defund Planned Parenthood, take money away from Obamacare, other provisions, which the Democrats said we can't go along with.
They somehow found a way to bring abortion into the discussion. And it's unfortunate that we're going to have more babies born with this defect by the time this gets worked out. And I wondered this morning whether or not we would see this foot dragging by the Republicans to hold back the $1.9 billion the president wants to attack this problem, if these babies were not brown babies, if this was not seen as a third world problem. I think it has to hit home harder for these legislators to remove the politics away from this issue and do the right thing by the public.
Well, I don't know, Bernie. I mean, there are nearly 2,000 Zika cases in Puerto Rico.
And many women who are of childbearing age who would benefit from any birth control that would be provided to them through these funds they seek to cut. And also, it's not necessary to take money from one place to put it in another. You simply have to create. I would think the smart thing to do, you've had Ebola, now you have Zika, to have a fund dedicated to these kinds of eventualities that appear very often.
These are nonpartisan health issues. They're not partisan. Nancy, all right, so you mentioned Senator Rubio and how you would like to see him, I think we all would like to see him, step in and be a hero in this. Here he is. I have to say, since he announced his re-election plans, I don't know, I get 5, 6 press releases from his office. This is a man with suddenly renewed interest in his job who is showing, I want to keep my job.
Well, in the job that he hates so much. Now, I mean, the Republicans do have a point. They are afraid that Donald Trump is going to affect down ticket and the ability for the Republicans to hold on to the Senate. However, Marco Rubio in particular, I think, even though he's the front runner, he really has to show that this is a job he wants, that he's not just waiting for 2020 to roll around and, gee, I'm going to try this again. Let's remember, he's a loser. He lost 66 out of the 67 counties
he won
here.
Miami-Dade.
This should not be a consolation prize for him.
I can't wait to see Pam Keith take him on if she manages to get the nomination. Rubio is running for president. He cannot get away from the fact that he was the savior, perceived savior of the Republican Party, and then got defeated by this idiot. The Republican Party is in such disarray. They're going to lose the Senate, I think. They're going to lose Florida. The only Republican who could help the Republican Party today is Abraham Lincoln, and he's not available. So they're going to go down.
Well, I think they'd shout him down too at this point.
We hope the spirit of Abraham Lincoln is available. Before we run out of time, Bernie, let me ask you first, and then everybody to join in. We are in the midst of an ecological disaster in the state of Florida. Lee, Martin, Palm Beach County, St. Lucie County. We have this guacamole thick algae bloom, this tide. It is just awful.
It's a great metaphor for how government works too, because you have this witch's brew of all these conflicting interests that create this goo paralysis, and then people get toxic. Apparently, it's very complicated. But it seems to be a number of interests conflicting, and very few politicians willing to do what is necessary not to have this not only happen now, but it's going to keep happening, and it happened before. And in essence, I'll let somebody who knows more than I explain it, but it's a lot of toxic things coming into Lake Okeechobee, leaving Lake Okeechobee, getting to the ocean, and they're not apparently routing it to the correct place.
Right. Well, I wish we had more time to get into it. We know the governor is blaming the Corps of Engineers, but there are fingers being pointed everywhere on this one, but it's got to be made better. Nancy, thank you very much. Bernie, great to see you. And Marvin, as always, thank you.
Happy July 4th.
All right, coming up, and to you. Glenna Milberg is going to join us live from New York City, where the iconic author, Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel is being remembered and honored. Glenna is live in just a minute. The nation and the world are in mourning today after the death of Elie Wiesel. He died in New York yesterday at the age of 87. As a teenager, 15 years old, he and his family were put in Buchenwald, the notorious Nazi death camp. But he survived, went on to write about that experience, and it was Elie Wiesel more perhaps than anyone else who embodied the cry, "Never again." He often came to South Florida. He helped open the Holocaust Memorial on Miami Beach back in 1990. We have sent our friend and colleague and co-moderator of this program, Glenna Milberg, to New York for the funeral coverage about Elie Wiesel. And Glenna, good morning, good to see you.
Good morning, Michael. Hello, everyone. Behind me, the East River, across the East River near Central Park, is the Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and that is where the funeral services for Elie Wiesel are going on right now. They are private. His family, some very close friends. We know Anti-Defamation League Director Abraham Foxman is there. But what's so interesting, Elie Wiesel, really an ambassador for peace and justice globally, not just for the United States or any particular country or peoples. And you know that there are so many people, world leaders, diplomats who would want to be at this funeral. In the Jewish religion, people are buried, tried to be buried within 24 hours, so this happened very quickly. The death was announced actually in Israel yesterday in Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust memorial there. Elie Wiesel, anyone who has seen or heard, read one of his 50 some odd books, has been in a country where he has been named, given awards. Of course, he is a Nobel laureate. He's got degrees and honorary doctorates from so many countries because of his work protecting people, being the voice of the oppressed and the voice of people who are voiceless. New York City is his adopted home, and he has a foundation here, which his wife Marion runs and his son Alicia is involved in. That foundation, of course, carries on his good work. We know, we have seen pictures and historical footage of Elie Wiesel with presidents from Ronald Reagan to Bill Clinton to the Bushes, as a voice, a very clear, strong voice for the oppressed. He is a moral compass, Michael, as you know, worldwide, a sort of a man slight in stature who promised, when he lived through one of the darkest times in human history, he came out of that silent like most at first, but it didn't take long to write that first book, Night, which is a very raw, unfiltered, horribly jarring account of what he endured with his father in Auschwitz and Birkenau. And many people know the diary of Anne Frank. His account picks up where Anne Frank's leaves off, and he has promised himself and promised the world that he will be a never-ending voice for not only the 6 million who perished in the Holocaust, but for those who endured genocide in places like Rwanda, Cambodia, and for people who, for instance, endured apartheid in South Africa. Elie Wiesel, Michael, is that voice and will be even after his death.
He was indeed, and I was lucky enough to meet him when he came to South Florida once to help dedicate the Holocaust Memorial on Miami Beach. Glenna, I was thinking this morning about that moment in 1985. He was receiving the Congressional Gold Medal from President Reagan, and he turned to President Reagan and he said in a very gentle but firm voice, Mr. President, don't go to the cemetery in Bitburg, Austria, where there are members of the Waffen-SS, the Nazis, who were buried there. He said, quote, that place, Mr. President, is not your place. Your place is with the victims of the SS. Imagine standing there saying that to the President of the United States. What courage.
And it worked, and he did that with so many world leaders. And in fact, most people, if they're going to come up with a quote to remember Elie Wiesel by, his quote that is probably most remembered is, the opposite of hate is not love, it's indifference. And that is such a clear and simple and profound message that resonates as we stand here and speak today.
Glenna Milberg in New York, and I know, Glenna, you will have coverage later of the funeral of Elie Wiesel. We are so happy you were there. Thanks, and I wish I were there with you. Thanks very much. All right, coming up, my personal perspective about Elie Wiesel and the legacy that he leaves behind. A live look now from our Hollywood beach cam, and here is Weather Authority meteorologist Jennifer Correa with your Sunday forecast.
Good Sunday afternoon, South Florida. It is steamy out there. Remember, the temperature is warming up to those low 90s, but we will feel like the triple digits. Live look out of Miami's Tower Cam. A few showers still popping up in parts of Miami-Dade and also Broward County. As we continue on through this afternoon, expect temperatures to warm up to 92 degrees, keeping that rain chance at 40%. By tomorrow, 30%. And again, with a high of 92, we'll be seeing a lot of sunshine out there, especially Tuesday and Wednesday.
Jennifer, thanks. All right, before we leave you this morning, a personal perspective about Elie Wiesel. He was a towering figure on the moral landscape of the world. More than anyone in our lifetime, he reminded us eloquently, passionately, repeatedly that we must never forget and that we have to mean it when we say never again. Elie Wiesel first wrote Night, a lightly fictionalized account of his own experience in the Nazi death camps. Night provided the first deep insight by a survivor into the horrors of the Holocaust. It is unforgettable. Wiesel wrote many more books, became the voice of moral authority in our time. He spoke out not just against the Holocaust, but he was a powerful voice against injustice, bigotry, and intolerance everywhere. He was also a witty speaker. He could be very funny. I spent a night some 30 years ago moderating a discussion with him at the Colony Theater on Miami Beach. What a privilege to have sat on the same stage and talked with this wise, compassionate man. It was a mitzvah, a blessing for me. Elie Wiesel wrote and said many wise and memorable things in his lifetime. Let me just quote a few of them. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And there was this: no one is as capable of gratitude as one who has emerged from the kingdom of night. Finally, this advice for writers: write only if you cannot live without writing. Write only what you alone can write. Elie Wiesel's writings will live on, as will his message of tolerance and understanding, his hard-won belief that love is stronger than hate. That's my perspective for this week. Hope you have a spectacular 4th of July. Happy birthday, America. And remember, as always, stay informed, get involved. What do you think? We invite you to weigh in on any topic you like. Email, Facebook, Twitter. Any of these addresses were easy to find. Love to hear from you. Have a great 4th of July.